The airplane rattled as it sliced through the turbulent sky, a distant storm raging beneath. Passengers gripped their armrests, faces pale, knuckles white. Flight 412 had left the city on schedule, but weather delays and mechanical warnings had turned a routine flight into a nightmare. The engines groaned, and a warning light blinked red on the cockpit dashboard. Captain Reynolds, a veteran pilot with over 20 years of experience, spoke calmly but firmly into the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing technical difficulties. Please remain calm and keep your seatbelts fastened. The crew is trained to handle this situation." Despite his voice, fear rippled through the cabin. People whispered prayers, clutched loved ones, and checked their phones, searching for updates they would never receive. Among them sat Emily, a 7-year-old girl clutching her stuffed rabbit. Her parents had been delayed at the airport, and she was flying with her grandmother, who tried desperately to keep her calm. Emily, however, did not seem afraid. Her small hands gripped the seat in front of her, eyes wide but focused, not on the storm or the warnings, but on something else entirely. Across the aisle, Mr. Jonathan Carter, a businessman returning from a corporate meeting, looked at her with curiosity. Most children were crying or panicking in the chaos. Emily sat silently, her gaze unwavering, her expression unnervingly calm. He shifted in his seat, adjusting his tie, but couldn't help noticing her composure. Flight attendants moved swiftly through the cabin, issuing reassurances, checking seat belts, and instructing passengers to follow safety protocols. "Remain seated. Do not panic. We will handle this," one said, her voice tight but professional. Emily's grandmother leaned closer, whispering, "Sweetheart, it's okay. Everything will be fine." Emily shook her head. "Grandma, I have to do something," she said, her voice steady. Her grandmother froze. "Do what?" Emily's eyes swept the cabin, landing on the worried faces around her. "I have to help," she said. Her grandmother opened her mouth, but words failed her. She glanced at the flight attendants, who were too busy managing the growing panic to notice a small child in their midst. The plane jolted violently, tossing passengers forward and backward. A collective gasp filled the cabin. Oxygen masks dropped from the ceiling, swinging like pendulums in the dim light. Children cried, adults prayed, and the hum of fear was almost deafening. Emily, however, remained calm. She sat upright, closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them with determination. From her backpack, she pulled out a small notebook and pencil. She had been drawing during the flight, unaware of the panic. But now the notebook became a tool for something far more important. Across the aisle, Jonathan noticed her movements. "What's she doing?" he muttered to himself. Emily began jotting down something, her small hands moving quickly. Numbers, shapes, diagrams. Though no one could see what she was writing, her focus was absolute. Her grandmother leaned closer again, anxiety overtaking her. "Emily, honey, sit down. You don't have to." Emily turned, placing a hand gently on her grandmother's arm. "Grandma, it's okay. I can do this. You'll see." Meanwhile, in the cockpit, Captain Reynolds and First Officer Harris were struggling with a sudden failure in one of the plane's engines. Alarms blared, red lights flashed, and the instruments indicated that the plane had only seconds before it could potentially crash. The storm below offered no clear landing options, and turbulence made controlled descent nearly impossible. Back in the cabin, the flight attendants tried to keep order, but the panic was spreading. Jonathan glanced at Emily again. The little girl seemed unusual, calm, focused, almost impossibly composed for someone her age. Suddenly she stood up. She clutched her notebook and shouted, "Everyone, listen to me!" Heads turned, and the cabin fell into a tense silence. Emily's voice, small but commanding, carried over the panic. "I know you're scared, but we have to work together. We can help the pilots. Everyone has a role." Laughter, disbelief, and murmurs rippled through the cabin. Adults looked at each other, unsure if this was a joke. A 7-year-old giving orders in a life-or-death moment seemed impossible. Emily ignored them. She began pointing at passengers, giving instructions. "Sir, check the oxygen mask and make sure it's secure. You, with the seatbelt, hold the rail. Everyone, stay calm. Talk to someone next to you. Tell them what they need to do." Her eyes shone with an intensity that drew people in. Something about her presence, her confidence, her clarity, compelled passengers to act. Adults began following her instructions, moving quickly and calmly, coordinating in ways they hadn't before. Jonathan, still stunned, watched as Emily's calm authority transformed the atmosphere. Panic decreased, shaky hands steadied. Breaths that had been shallow and rapid slowed. People worked together. Emily's grandmother stared, overwhelmed. "I don't understand. How do you know what to do?" Emily shrugged. "I just know. We have to help each other." The plane jolted again, violently this time. The engines screamed, and the warning lights continued to blink. Captain Reynolds spoke into the intercom, unaware that a small child was coordinating the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, brace for turbulence. Please remain seated and follow the crew's instructions." Emily, ignoring the turbulence, continued directing passengers. "Push the tray tables up. Secure the belts. Hold the handles. Talk to the person next to you. They need to stay calm." Her words were simple but effective. Fearful adults followed her cues. The cabin, which had been in chaos moments before, became organized. People supported one another, shared instructions, and offered reassurance. Emily had done what none of the adults could. She created order from panic. As the plane descended into the storm, lightning flashing dangerously close, Captain Reynolds struggled to stabilize the aircraft. Sweat dripped from his brow. "We're barely holding it," he muttered to Harris. "We need calm in the cabin, or this will get worse." Somehow, miraculously, that calm was happening. Emily's influence spread like wildfire. Adults checked each other, reassured each other, and began coordinating with the crew. The cabin had transformed into a team, a network of support and vigilance. Guided by the small, unwavering voice of a child, Jonathan looked at her in awe. "I can't believe this," he whispered to himself. She's leading them."
Emily noticed him staring and gave a small nod. "Stay focused,"
she said. "Everyone has to do their part." Jonathan, heart pounding, obeyed immediately, helping secure passengers and directing them to follow her instructions. As the seconds ticked down, the plane began to stabilize slightly. The storm still raged, but the collaborative effort had minimized chaos. Captain Reynolds, noticing the unusual calm in the cabin, realized that the passengers were actually cooperating efficiently, something almost unheard of in an emergency. He glanced at First Officer Harris. "I don't know how they did it," Reynolds said, voice tight. "But it's working. People are calm." Harris looked around and noticed the child standing at the front, near her grandmother, directing passengers quietly but firmly. "Look," he said. "That little girl, she's doing something." Captain Reynolds' eyes widened. She's helping." The final moments of the descent were harrowing. Turbulence shook the plane violently. Lightning flashed dangerously close. The engines groaned. But thanks to Emily, the cabin worked as a team. Each passenger knew their role, held on to their courage, and reassured one another. Seconds from disaster, Captain Reynolds managed to regain control, stabilizing the plane for a rough but survivable landing. The plane touched down hard, tires screeching on the wet runway, but it did not crash. It slowed, came to a stop, and the engines powered down safely. Relief erupted throughout the cabin. Passengers embraced, some crying, some laughing. And in the midst of it all, Emily clutched her stuffed rabbit, calm as ever, a small smile on her face. Her grandmother hugged her tightly. "You saved everyone," she whispered. "Emily, shh." Rugged. "I just told them what to do." Jonathan knelt beside her, tears in his eyes. "No, kid. You didn't just tell them what to do. You saved lives." Emily looked up at him innocently. I just wanted everyone to be okay." The cabin was filled with a mixture of relief, awe, and lingering tension. Passengers unbuckled their seatbelts slowly, still shaken but grateful to be alive. Flight attendants moved carefully down the aisles, checking on everyone, handing out water, and offering reassuring words. But the attention quickly shifted to one small figure near the front, Emily, the 7-year-old who had somehow kept the entire plane calm in the midst of chaos. News traveled fast among passengers. "Did you see her?" whispered one woman. She told people what to do." Jonathan, still pale from the adrenaline, crouched next to Emily's grandmother. "I've seen a lot in my life," he said, voice trembling. "But I've never seen anything like this. That little girl, she kept everyone alive." Emily's grandmother held her close. "I don't understand how she stayed so calm. She's always been brave, but this is beyond anything I imagined." Emily simply hugged her stuffed rabbit and said quietly, "I just did what I thought was right." By the time the plane came to a full stop at the gate, the airport emergency teams were already on standby. Passengers disembarked cautiously, some still shaking, some holding back tears. Journalists and reporters, alerted by early phone calls from the crew, had begun to arrive, hoping to cover the dramatic landing. Jonathan walked beside Emily and her grandmother as airport staff helped them exit the plane. Cameras flashed, microphones were thrust forward, and passengers began recounting the story to anyone who would listen. "She saved everyone," one man said repeatedly, his voice shaky. "A little girl. She saved us." Emily stayed calm amid chaos, holding her grandmother's hand tightly. She looked up at Jonathan, who bent down to her level. "You were incredible," he said. "Do you know that?" Emily shrugged. "I just wanted everyone to be okay." Jonathan shook his head in disbelief. "No, kid. You did more than that. You led them. You kept them alive." Soon the story went viral. Social media erupted with videos and eyewitness accounts of the harrowing flight. Headlines read, "7-year-old hero keeps passengers calm on plummeting plane," and little girl's bravery saves lives during turbulence nightmare. News anchors replayed clips showing passengers following a small child's instructions, holding hands and coordinating safety measures under her guidance. Experts debated how a child could have the presence of mind, focus, and leadership skills necessary to orchestrate such calm. Emily's grandmother, meanwhile, tried to keep her grounded amid the attention. "Sweetheart, you were amazing, but let's remember, we're just glad everyone's safe." Emily nodded solemnly. "I know, Grandma, I just wanted to help." Jonathan, now back home, couldn't stop thinking about her. A child he had never met before had done what seasoned adults could not. She had given people hope, direction, and calm in a life-or-death scenario. He realized how rare such courage and clarity were, and how much he wanted to understand it. The next morning, he called Emily's grandmother. "I know it might sound strange," he said, "but I'd like to meet her properly. I want to thank her and, well, learn how a 7-year-old can be braver than anyone I've ever known." Emily's grandmother hesitated. "She's young and this is a lot for her, but I think she'd like that." When Jonathan arrived, Emily greeted him with a small nod, holding her rabbit tightly. "Hi," she said simply. "Hi," he replied. "I just wanted to tell you, you were amazing. You helped save so many people. Do you know how rare that is?" Emily thought for a moment. I guess I just did what I needed to do." Jonathan smiled, realizing the depth of her wisdom. It was humility combined with bravery, a combination most adults never mastered. In the days following, the airline officially recognized Emily. They presented her with a certificate of bravery and a small token of appreciation. Local media interviewed her and her grandmother, and the story spread nationally and then globally. People were inspired, moved, and in awe. Jonathan stayed in touch as well. He visited Emily occasionally, bringing books, puzzles, and little challenges to nurture her curiosity and intellect. He discovered she wasn't just brave. She was thoughtful, analytical, and intuitive beyond her years. One afternoon, as they sat together, Jonathan asked, "Emily, how did you know what to do on the plane?" She paused, thinking, "I don't know, I just watched everyone. I saw people were scared. I thought if they had someone telling them what to do, maybe they wouldn't panic. I just wanted everyone to be okay." Jonathan's heart ached with admiration. She had instinctively understood leadership, empathy, and responsibility, and she had executed it flawlessly under extreme pressure. Emily's story also inspired her classmates. Teachers shared her experience during school assemblies, highlighting her courage and composure. Children asked questions, wanting to understand how they could be brave like her. Parents and adults alike reflected on the importance of presence, calm, and empathy in moments of crisis. Jonathan, meanwhile, began mentoring Emily in subtle ways, not to teach her bravery, she already had that, but to encourage reflection, problem-solving, and understanding her own instincts. He realized that the little girl's courage had affected more than just the passengers. It had touched him profoundly as well. He had seen fear, chaos, and uncertainty, and in the middle of it, Emily's clarity had shone like a beacon. He knew he would carry that lesson forever, that courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. As the weeks passed, Emily's story became a permanent part of public consciousness. Airlines began training programs inspired by her actions, teaching passengers how to remain calm and support one another during emergencies. Experts cited her as an example of innate leadership and emotional intelligence. Emily, however, remained humble. She never sought fame or recognition. She simply returned to her daily life, school, playdates, homework, but with a quiet confidence that she had changed the world even in a small way. Jonathan, watching her grow, felt a mixture of pride and awe. He realized that the true impact of that flight wasn't just the lives saved in that moment. It was the way Emily had reminded adults of something essential: humanity, courage, and compassion. Part 3. Life returned to a semblance of normalcy for Emily after the dramatic flight. School resumed, her friends peppered her with questions, and adults around her continued to marvel at her courage. But Emily, true to her nature, remained grounded. She knew bravery wasn't about applause or recognition. It was about action when it mattered. Jonathan, meanwhile, couldn't stop thinking about her. He had seen many extraordinary individuals in his life, but Emily's clarity and calm under pressure left him speechless. One afternoon, he decided to spend the day with her, not as a celebrity or mentor, but simply as a companion. They visited a science museum, where Emily's inquisitive mind came alive. She asked insightful questions about aerodynamics, turbulence, and emergency procedures. Jonathan realized that her remarkable calm during the flight wasn't luck. It was understanding. She processed information quickly, identified risks, and acted decisively. Her courage was grounded in knowledge and awareness. "See, Jonathan," she said, pointing to a wind tunnel exhibit. "If you understand how air moves, you know what to do when it gets unstable. You don't panic, you respond." Jonathan smiled, impressed. "You're incredible, Emily. You were born to lead," she shrugged modestly. "I just wanted everyone to be okay." That night, Jonathan received an urgent call. A corporate flight carrying executives, much like the one Emily had been on, was experiencing turbulence over a stormy region. Passengers were panicking, and the crew needed guidance for on-board coordination. Remembering Emily's remarkable composure, Jonathan reached out to the airline. "Would it be possible to involve Emily?" he asked hesitantly. "I know she's young, but she has experience managing cabin coordination under stress." There was a pause on the other end of the line, followed by cautious agreement. Emily was flown virtually into the cockpit via a secure video call. She appeared on a screen, calm and composed, immediately issuing simple instructions: organize passengers, check seatbelts, assist children, and communicate calmly. To the astonishment of the cabin crew and passengers, Emily's guidance worked. People followed her clear, concise instructions. Panic diminished. Parents reassured children. Crew members were able to manage the aircraft more effectively thanks to her calm authority. The turbulence eventually subsided, and the plane reached its destination safely. Jonathan watched the feed from his office, awestruck. Emily, just a child, had once again prevented chaos and potential disaster. "This kid is extraordinary," he murmured to himself. News of Emily's second remarkable intervention spread quickly, reinforcing her reputation as a child prodigy. GY in courage, leadership, and emotional intelligence. Experts analyzed her behavior, studying her decision-making, calmness under pressure, and natural ability to coordinate groups. Psychologists described her as a rare combination of intuitive intelligence and empathetic leadership, a child capable of inspiring adults to rise above fear. Despite the media attention, Emily remained herself. She played with friends, studied, and spent time with her grandmother and Jonathan. She understood that bravery wasn't a spectacle, it was responsibility. Her perspective inspired adults around her to reconsider what courage truly meant. One evening, Jonathan asked her a question. "Emily, have you ever been scared?" She paused, thinking carefully. "Yes," she admitted, "but I know that fear doesn't have to control me. If I do what's right, even a little bit, I can make a difference." Jonathan felt his chest tighten. He'd spent decades chasing success, thinking power and wealth defined impact. Emily had taught him a different lesson. Influence comes from empathy, clarity, and action, not status. At school, teachers noted a shift as well. Emily's classmates began listening more attentively, supporting each other, and solving problems collaboratively. Her quiet example inspired leadership and initiative. Jonathan saw these changes and marveled. A single child's calmness in a moment of crisis had a ripple effect far beyond a single flight. Emily, however, never let it go to her head. She remained modest, focusing instead on understanding, helping, and learning. Her bravery was instinctive, unpretentious, and deeply human. One day, as she sat drawing in her notebook, Jonathan asked, "Emily, why do you stay so calm when things go wrong?" She looked up, thoughtful. "I focus on what I can do. Worrying doesn't help. Acting does." Jonathan nodded slowly. "You've taught me something important, you know. That calm action is more powerful than fear." She smiled, hugging her stuffed rabbit. "I just want to help." Jonathan realized that Emily's courage wasn't about her age, size, or position. It was about intention and clarity. She reminded everyone that even the smallest person can have the greatest impact when they act decisively and with empathy. Months passed since Emily's second heroic act, and the world had not forgotten her. She had become an inspiration, a symbol of courage, and a reminder that age did not limit the impact one could make. Schools, organizations, and media outlets wanted to honor her. But Emily, true to her nature, remained humble, uninterested in fame. She preferred her quiet routines, school, homework, play, and spending time with her grandmother and Jonathan. One day, Emily received an invitation from the airline to attend a formal recognition ceremony. It would be held in a grand auditorium, with executives, journalists, and officials present. Jonathan accompanied her, ensuring she felt safe and prepared for the attention. The ceremony was overwhelming at first. Lights, cameras, applause, and speeches. Emily observed everything carefully, her small hands gripping her grandmother's. Jonathan noticed her nerves but was confident she would handle it with the same calm and clarity she had shown on the plane. When it was her turn to speak, Emily walked to the podium, her tiny frame dwarfed by the stage. A hush fell over the audience. She cleared her throat, looked at the crowd, and simply said, "I just wanted to help. The room erupted in applause. Officials, executives, and passengers alike were amazed that such a small statement, delivered by a 7-year-old, carried so much weight. It wasn't about grandeur or theatrics. It was about intention, courage, and empathy. After the ceremony, Jonathan watched as people approached Emily. With gratitude, praise, and curiosity, she answered politely, never boastful, always sincere. One executive asked, "How did you stay so calm during the turbulence?" Emily thought for a moment and replied, "I focused on what everyone could do. Fear doesn't help. Action does." The answer left everyone speechless. A simple philosophy, yet so profound, coming from a child who had faced danger head-on. As the days went on, Emily's reputation grew. Invitations came from schools, safety organizations, and community groups. Jonathan noticed that adults often approached her not just to congratulate, but to learn from her. She'd become a teacher of calm, clarity, and leadership. However, Emily's humility never wavered. She continued attending school, playing with friends, and following routines. She understood that her heroism didn't make her special, it made her responsible, and she wanted to use her abilities to help, not to seek recognition. One day, a minor incident at school tested her courage once again. A small fire broke out in the cafeteria. Panic erupted. Students screamed and ran. Teachers struggled to maintain order. Emily remained calm. She immediately instructed children to exit in an organized line, guided teachers to check that no one was left behind, and even found the janitor to help contain the fire with extinguishers until emergency personnel arrived. When the smoke cleared and the fire was under control, teachers and students alike were astonished. "How did you know what to do?" asked one teacher. Emily shrugged. "I just thought about what would help everyone stay safe." Jonathan, observing from the sidelines, realized that Emily's bravery and clarity were not accidental. They were part of who she was. She naturally assessed situations, prioritized action, and communicated effectively, inspiring confidence in others. The impact of Emily's actions began to ripple further. Schools incorporated her approach into safety drills. Airlines and corporations used her story to train staff in crisis leadership. Children and adults alike learned the importance of remaining calm, observing carefully, and taking deliberate action in emergencies. Jonathan often reflected on how extraordinary Emily's mind was. He had met leaders, strategists, and thinkers in his life, but none matched her combination of intelligence, empathy, and courage. And yet she remained grounded, humble, and unassuming, a rare combination that made her influence even more profound. One evening, as Emily and Jonathan walked home from the park, he asked, "Emily, do you ever get scared?" She looked up, thoughtful. "Yes, but I know that fear doesn't have to control me. I just focus on what I can do." Jonathan nodded slowly. "You've taught me something I'll never forget. True courage isn't about strength or size. It's about heart, clarity, and action." Emily smiled, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "I just wanted everyone to be okay." Jonathan realized that the small, quiet words of a 7-year-old had changed his understanding of leadership, bravery, and humanity. Emily's story continued to inspire. Adults approached her to learn how to remain calm under pressure. Children emulated her actions in playground games and school projects. Her bravery had created a ripple effect, influencing not just the passengers of the flight, but an entire community. Jonathan, reflecting on everything that had happened, understood the profound lesson. Sometimes the smallest voice carries the greatest wisdom. A child's perspective, free from ego and fear, could teach adults more than years of experience ever could. Emily, for her part, continued living her life with purpose, empathy, and courage. She understood that heroism wasn't about recognition. It was about helping others, staying calm, and acting decisively when it mattered most. It was a bright, clear morning when Flight 517 prepared to depart. Unlike the previous flights that Emily had been on, this one was routine, just another trip across the country. Passengers settled in, and the hum of the engines provided a sense of comfort. Emily, now accustomed to her quiet role as a source of calm, held her rabbit and smiled at Jonathan, who was accompanying her for the day. No one expected that within the hour, the calm would be shattered. A sudden mechanical failure jolted the plane mid-air. The cabin shook violently, lights flickered, and alarms blared. Passengers screamed, some crying, others clutching loved ones. Flight attendants attempted to maintain order, but chaos threatened to overtake them. Emily, though startled, immediately assessed the situation. She looked around, noting frightened faces, confused crew members, and parents trying to reassure their children. She took a deep breath, clutching her notebook and pencil from her backpack. Jonathan, witnessing her composure, realized that the same child who had calmed a plummeting plane months ago was now ready to do it again. "Everyone, listen to me!" Emily shouted, her voice small but commanding. The cabin fell into an uneasy silence. All eyes turned to her. "I know you're scared," she continued, "but panic won't help. We need to work together. Parents, help your children stay calm. Adults, listen to the crew. Look at what you can do, not what you're afraid of." Passengers hesitated, but something about her presence, her unwavering eyes, confident tone, and calm demeanor compelled them to listen. Adults began to follow her instructions, securing seatbelts, assisting children, and helping each other remain calm. Jonathan helped Emily, reinforcing her words and assisting passengers with practical tasks. Crew members, initially hesitant, realized that a child's clarity was guiding them better than panic or confusion. They communicated instructions more effectively, organized evacuations for emergency procedures, and reassured passengers. Emily's focus never wavered. She moved through the cabin, offering guidance and encouragement. "Hold on to the handles. Keep your voices calm. Help the person next to you." Each command was simple, precise, and effective. Meanwhile, in the cockpit, the pilots were struggling to stabilize the plane. The storm below offered no safe landing zones, and the mechanical failure had left them with limited options. Captain Reynolds, monitoring the cabin feed via internal cameras, noticed the passengers moving in an orderly fashion. "I can't believe this," he said, voice tight. "They're organized, coordinated. Because of a child?" First Officer Harris nodded. "Look at her. That little girl, she's directing them." Reynolds shook his head. "This is incredible. I've never seen anything like it." Emily's calm leadership allowed the pilots to focus entirely on stabilizing the aircraft. Her instructions minimized chaos, kept everyone safe, and allowed the crew to act efficiently. The next few tense minutes felt like hours. Lightning flashed, engines groaned, and turbulence tossed the plane violently. But Emily's presence created a sense of structure. Passengers whispered encouragement to each other, held hands, and followed her instructions without hesitation. Finally, the plane began its descent, controlled but turbulent. Captain Reynolds landed it on a runway barely visible through the storm. Tires screeched, engines groaned, but the aircraft came to a complete stop, intact and intact. Relief erupted. Passengers screamed with joy, hugged strangers, and cried tears of gratitude. Emily hugged her rabbit, quietly observing the celebration. Jonathan knelt beside her. "You did it again," he said, tears in his eyes. "You kept everyone safe." Emily smiled, calm as ever. "I just told them what to do." Her grandmother, watching from the sidelines, could barely speak. "I don't understand. How do you stay so calm?" Emily shrugged. "I focus on helping. Fear doesn't solve anything. Action does." The aftermath of Flight 517 cemented Emily's place in the hearts of people worldwide. Media outlets hailed her as the child who saved lives twice, and airlines studied her approach to develop better passenger guidance protocols. Schools included her story in safety and leadership lessons. Psychologists analyzed her extraordinary ability to stay calm and guide others, calling her a rare combination of emotional intelligence and innate leadership. Jonathan, proud and humbled, often reflected on her impact. Emily's courage wasn't performative. It was instinctive, empathetic, and effective. She had demonstrated that true heroism could come from the smallest among us, provided they add clarity, calm, and compassion. Months later, Emily's story became an enduring lesson in bravery. She continued attending school, playing with friends, and living an ordinary life with extraordinary influence. Jonathan remained a close mentor and supporter, always inspired by her insights and composure. One afternoon, as Emily and Jonathan walked through a park, he asked, "Do you ever get scared when things happen?" Emily thought for a moment. "Yes, but I know that fear doesn't have to control me. I just focus on what I can do to help others." Jonathan nodded, understanding fully now. "You've taught the world something priceless, Emily. Courage isn't about size, age, or power. It's about heart, clarity, and action." She smiled, clutching her rabbit. "I just want everyone to be okay." Jonathan realized that her simple words captured the essence of heroism. The little girl who had calmed panicking passengers on not one but two flights had reshaped the understanding of bravery for countless people. Emily's legacy extended beyond airlines, schools, and news articles. She became a symbol of hope, compassion, and leadership for children and adults alike. People learned that courage could emerge from the most unexpected places, and that one voice, even a small one, could inspire collective action in moments of crisis. Jonathan often thought about the first flight, the turbulence, the fear, and the chaos, and he always returned to the same realization. A child's clarity, empathy, and courage could save lives and teach the world what true leadership looks like. Emily, unaware of the full scope of her influence, simply lived each day with purpose, compassion, and bravery. She had shown everyone that even when the plane is seconds from crashing, a small voice guided by courage and heart can shock, inspire, and save everyone on board.